to ask me questions, and I try my best to answer them. I know a lot of you have a lot of questions about the English language. I will do everything I can to answer them as best as I possibly can. Let me just check to make sure everything's working for a minute here. I think it should be. I know last week we had a few technical problems, but I think this week everything, and I try my best to, looks like everything's working. So hey, Bob the Canadian here. Welcome to this English lesson. I hope you are having a really good Friday evening or Saturday morning, or sorry, Sunday morning. I've lost track of time there a little bit. Do you know that phrase in English? You can lose track of time. When you lose track of time, you kind of forget what time it is or what day it is. So anyways, I hope you are having a really good Saturday evening or a really good Sunday morning. Todd is in the chat. He will be posting a link where you can ask some questions. I only take questions from that link where you can submit a question about the English language via Google Forms. So please use the chat to have great conversations with each other. And if you have a question for me, please use the link that Todd is posting. I just want to stop to say hello to everyone who is here. By the way, if you're new here, don't forget to click that subscribe button. But let's find the first question and just get right into the lesson for this evening. First question is from Dimitri. Dimitri from the Ukraine. Hi, Bob. Hi, Dimitri. Could you please tell me the recipe of tea with honey that you drink? I have it right here. What are the proportions? Do you add the honey, or do you add honey after the tea is ready? Well, this is the tea I drink. I actually went and got the box because I saw that you had asked the question earlier. It's just a normal orange Pico tea, but it is decaffeinated. You can see there's French on here as well, because we live in Canada. But it is a decaffeinated orange Pico tea. I put one of these tea bags into a cup of boiling water and I let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then I add a teaspoon of honey. So you can see here, I just have honey. This is pure, 100% pure liquid Canadian honey from Canadian bees, and it's in a jar that looks like a bear. Then I stir it and I put it in here and then I drink it. And when I drink it, I try not to slurp too much. So that was the first question about tea. That was a great question. Thank you, Dimitri. Let's see here. Next question, also from Dimitri, says, could you please explain phrasal verbs related to driving with the word pull? Pull away, pull up, pull over. Why pull? Is it related to directing a horse with a bridle? I don't know why we have the word pull, but I will explain each of those. When you're in a car and you put the car in drive and you leave, we say that you pull away, okay? So he was pulling away with his car. I have to scroll back a little bit here. When you pull up, so if there's a building, you pull up to the building. And when you pull over, if you're on the road, you pull over onto the side of the road. So there's some examples of how we use those. But why we use them, I'm not exactly sure. Let's see here. Next question, also from Dimitri. Sorry, he has a lot of questions. That's great, though. These are helpful questions for everybody. How do you pronounce words like morale, finale, like season finale, and locale? Is there a difference between American and British pronunciation? So I don't know. All I can tell you is how I would pronounce them as a Canadian. So I would say morale, I would say finale, and I would say locale. So that's how I would pronounce those three. I am not sure if there's a different pronunciation. Next question from Elizabeth. Elizabeth says, hello, Bob. I would like to know the difference between oh my God, oh my goodness, and gosh. So they're all used the same way. It's to express surprise. But oh my God would not be used by people who are religious, okay? Because they would consider saying oh my God as taking the Lord's name in vain. That's how it would be described. And so generally they would say oh my goodness, or oh my gosh, or gosh. So they're all expressions of surprise. That's how I would describe them. Let's see here. Pavel says, Pavel says, hi, Bob. I can't watch your live stream because it's too late for me. I'm sorry, Pavel, about that, but I'm going to watch later. I've long wanted to ask and hope you'll answer it. What does overwhelming mean? So sometimes things can be overwhelming. It means that you don't have the energy or the ability to think about it or to deal with it. I know I'm using a lot of different English phrases there, but sometimes a lot of things happen in life. Let's say you got in a car accident and you lost your job, and a good friend of yours decided they didn't want to be your friend anymore. We would consider that to be overwhelming, that there's too many things happening at once for you to be able to easily think about and do what you need to do for each of those situations. So that's how I would describe overwhelming. Next question, Renata says, hello, Bob. First off, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you had a great time with your family. What is a typical Thanksgiving dinner in Canada like? So first of all, let's make sure we know the difference between Canadian Thanksgiving and American Thanksgiving. So I think Renata is aware that Canadian Thanksgiving was a month ago. Canadian Thanksgiving is in October, and we had a traditional Thanksgiving dinner. Actually, there's a video. I did do a video about Thanksgiving. So we had potatoes and turkey and vegetables, traditional Thanksgiving dinner. This past Thursday, though, was Thanksgiving in the United States, and they would have had a similar dinner to what I had. So great question, Renata. Renata has quite a few questions here. Renata, I'm going to kind of skip back and forth between your questions so that everyone else also has a chance. I love it that you've asked a lot of questions. That's great. But I'm going to kind of save some of them for along the way. Lolly Lolly says, hi, Bob. Please, what's the main difference between powerful and potent? Merci, Bob. So first of all, they mean the same thing. If an alcoholic drink it's really powerful or really potent, it means it has a lot of alcohol in it. Or if someone is a very, let's see here, like he's a very powerful person or very potent. I guess potent is used more to describe things. What I would say is that we use powerful more. We don't use the word potent very often anymore. It's an older word, and it is used for some things. Like if I take some medicine and it makes me feel funny, I might say that the medicine is very potent, but definitely not as widely used as the word powerful. Mikhail has the next question. Mikhail says, hi, Bob from the Czech Republic. Hi, Mikhail. Or Michael. 1 a.m. it's already 1 a.m. here, so I hope I will not fall asleep during your lesson. I hope you don't either. I would like to ask you to explain what is the difference between 0 and aught. So aught and not are all older versions of 0. But I'll tell you this, we only really use the word 0, and maybe we'll use the word nil. So 0 or nil are the two words that we would use in Canada to represent nothing, So if we say, there's zero cookies left in the bag, that would be something we would say. And nil is more of a mathematical term for 0. We don't use ought or not or any of those very British ways of saying 0 in Canada. So next question is from Dikshanch. What was it like to grow up in the 80s as a teenager, especially without the internet? Internet is such a big part of a modern teenager's life. So it was interesting to grow up in the 80s. So I, in the 80s, was definitely a teenager. And it was interesting for me. I did have a computer from the age of 8 or 9. And I did connect to what was the beginning of the internet. Well, it wasn't really the internet. It was more, we had a modem and we could connect. I won't go into the details, but you could connect to other computers and play games. So it was cool, but for someone like me who loves technology, I was always wanting more, and I always knew that better things were coming. So the mid-90s were actually a lot of fun for me when the early internet started. So great question, Dikshanch. I love that one. That's a good one. Let me clean up my questions here. Tiago has the next question. Tiago says, hello, Bob. What does walked out on me means? When someone walks out on you, it means they leave you. We sometimes use this to describe when a married couple breaks up. So sometimes we'll say, her husband walked out on her. And that would mean he left. They're probably going to get a divorce. Or we say, you know, Joe, the other day, Joe, did you hear his wife walked out on him? And that would mean that she left him. They're no longer together. In a simpler form, you can, if you're in a room with someone talking, and you can just walk out on them. But more when we use this, it's in reference to when a couple splits up. We would say that he walked out on her, or the opposite. Let me just check here. A lot of questions coming in. Please be patient, people, as I try to work through them. So Cassiano says, hi, Bob. I'd like to know what's the difference between effort and endeavor. So when you make an effort to do something well, it means you work hard at it. When you endeavor to do something, it means about the same thing. In those two sentences, they mean pretty much the same thing. There are slight differences if you go beyond those, but I can put a lot of effort into making my tea, and I can endeavor to make good tea. Similar meaning in that I am trying to make really, really good tea. That is good tea. That tastes really good. Let's see. Jajuan says, so Bob, when someone is twirly, what does it mean? I have not heard that word used to describe someone. I'm sure in some English-speaking countries that is a word, but in Canada we do not often describe someone as twirly. Now we do use the verb to twirl. You can twirl your hair if it's long enough. So that would mean you go like this. But I have not in Canada heard someone describe as being twirly. So you'll have to check if that is a common saying in maybe Britain or Australia or another English-speaking country. Hariadi says, what's the difference between oversee versus control? Thanks, Bob. So if you oversee a project, it does mean you are in charge of the project. You know, there's at my school right now, I am kind of overseeing a new English conversation program. So I am the one in charge of it. I am the manager of the program. I oversee the program. When you use the word control, it's a little more like, you know, I control the schedule. I control when people meet. So oversee is like for the whole project, but you use the word control to talk about specific parts of the project. Hope that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense tonight, everybody. Sometimes I feel like my explanations aren't as good as they could be. But anyways, we're having a nice evening, all 318 of you. Hopefully you're learning a bit of English while you're here. Don't forget, if you're new though, you should subscribe. That would be really good, and thumbs up are always nice. Diago says, hi Bob, please can you tell me the different ways to say you are welcome, thanks. So this comes up a lot. There's a lot of variations. The most common one is to just say you're welcome, to use the contraction, you're welcome. But we say you are welcome, you are very welcome, you are most welcome. There are a lot of variations to saying you're welcome. But the most common one would be you're welcome. And we do say it. You know, there's a lot of videos I noticed on YouTube where other English teachers say, you know, don't say you're welcome, don't say this. And I think I'm just worried about some of those, because we do actually say you're welcome. We say it a lot. Like, thank you, you're welcome. Thank you very much, you're welcome. Definitely. Pedro has the next question. Pedro says, hi Bob, I heard the expression steer clear of something. It means to keep your distance from something, right? Yes. So this, maybe you have a cousin who gets in trouble a lot, and you would say to someone, steer clear of my cousin because he's just no good. If you hang out with him, he does bad things all the time. So steer clear of him. And that would mean don't hang out with him. Hey, I see a few folks asking questions in the chat. Please remember that please use the link to ask your question. It just helps keep things organized. And I, at this point, have a lot of questions to answer, so please be patient with me as I work through them. Next question, I'm going to go back to a question from Renata. Is it going to be difficult for a Brazilian to live permanently in Canada? I'm not sure. I don't know how our immigration laws apply to people from Brazil. I know we have really good relations with the country of Brazil, and I think if you have all of your paperwork in order, I think it would not be that difficult. I don't know for sure, but I think it would be fairly straightforward. Napoleon says, how can I prepare for the IELTS exam? So start way in advance. When I did my French exams, I would study for a whole year for each of them. And I would do, everyone's going to get tired of me saying this, I would practice my reading, writing, listening, speaking, and build vocabulary every day. So every day I did all 5. And the best thing I did was hire different people via Preply to help me practice via Skype or FaceTime. There is a link in the description to Preply. It does cost money, but certainly hiring someone that you can meet via Skype or FaceTime is very helpful when you're preparing for a test. Very, very, very helpful. Let's see here. Let me get to the next question. Again, folks, I have a lot of questions here, so please be patient. Next question is from Gabo. Hello, Bob. Would you please tell me the difference between being and been regarding pronunciation, please? So first of all, listen to this. I say being, okay? When you're being a good person, it's good that it's good for when you are being good. So being, you can hear the faster I say it, the more it does sound the same as being. And then the second one, being, we actually say been and been, and it's kind of tricky. How have you been? How have you been? Generally, I say how have you been? So even though it's B-E-E-N, and I should say been, I tend to say been. How have you been? So let me say it again. The first one is being. There is a g sound at the end. And the second one is either been or been. When I say been, it sounds funny to me. So let me get to the next question. Chari says, what is the best way to learn grammar while reading? I'm a reader, and usually I get so into the book that I just try to understand the context, but that way I don't think I learn. I think you do, though. I think one of the best ways to learn grammar is to read a lot and listen to a lot of English. And eventually it becomes second nature. That's a term we use when it becomes very easy. So I would say, don't worry about it. If you are reading and enjoying the reading, don't worry about the grammar too much. It will come to you as you use more and more English, for sure. Let me get the next question here. So Adam Hrobos says, hi, Bob. Hi, Adam. What's the difference between bring and fetch? Thank you. So if I say to someone, can you, like if I yelled, hey, Jen, could you bring me some more tea? She would probably say, okay, and she would bring me some more tea. Or I could say, Jen, could you fetch me some more tea? And that would mean the same thing. Bring is much more common in Canadian English. I would most likely say, hey, could you bring me some more tea? When you ask someone to fetch something, it means a similar thing, but it means to go get it. Generally, we use bring, though. That's a more common one. Let's see. Saeed says, hi, Bob. Have you made a lesson about the apostrophe S contraction? I have not. Oh, wait. I think I did. I did a short video on contractions. You can search for Bob the Canadian Contractions on YouTube. Search for Bob the Canadian Contractions. I didn't do the apostrophe S particularly, but I did the 5 most important ones for you to know. So that would be a good thing to do. Let's see here. Saeed says, where is the warmest place in Canada? Big cities, I mean. So the best city to live in if you want to be warm in Canada is Vancouver, British Columbia. So Vancouver, I think I'm spelling it wrong. Vancouver, British Columbia is the westernmost province, and if you live in the city of Vancouver, it is the warmest city in Canada. That is where you would go to. Hey, folks in the chat, I see a lot of questions there. Please make sure you do ask them using the form. I'm going to pull the next question up from How. Hi, Bob. Could you please explain the phrases blow someone out of the water, or someone has a good tooth and hit the spot? When we talk about food, thanks. Oh, so when you blow someone out of the water, it means you just impress them. You know, I was blown out of the water by how good the speech was. When you said someone has a good tooth, but we usually say someone has a sweet tooth. If I say in English that someone has a sweet tooth, it means they like candy and they like things with sugar in them. And when we say something hit the spot, it means that it was yummy. It was delicious. It was very, very tasty. So hopefully that made sense to you. Let me get the next question from Nick. Nick says, hi, Bob. Good morning. Greetings from Singapore. I always enjoy your lessons. Thank you, Nick. My question is few things. Okay. So the correct answer is few things. That's how you would say that. And that is the correct spelling. So I need to take a few things to work with me on Monday. That's how I would say that. Next question. I'm going to just kind of clean up my questions here. There we go, so that I don't do them twice. And we're going to take another question from Renata. Renata says, could you explain the difference between... about the following. Person, people, persons, peoples. Thank you in advance. This is going to be a tricky one. So when I went out the other night, there was only one person at the store. When I went out the other night, there were a lot of people at the store. They had, persons and peoples is a challenging one. I'm going to have to think about that one, Renata. Let me see. How would I use persons? So you would say people didn't have a lot of money on their persons. That's a bad example, but that is how we would say it. And when we say peoples, we usually are talking about the people in a country. You know, so the different peoples that make up Canada would be an example. Sorry, that wasn't the best explanation, but there were a few example sentences in there. I think that will help you a bit. Next question from Simo. Hi, Bob. I learned English and now I understand it well, but I have a problem with expressing myself. Talking to others, can you give me and others like me some practical tips to avoid this problem? Yeah, generally, I just recommend that you talk to people more. The more time you spend talking to other people, the better you will get at talking to other people. The problem is it can be hard to find someone to talk to. Sometimes you have to pay someone so that you can have an English tutor. But the more you talk to people, the better you'll get at it. That's kind of how our brains work. The more you practice something, the better you get at it. So hopefully you can find someone, again, via Skype. There's a link below to Preply, or there's another website called italki. Both great websites where if you have some money, you can pay someone to have an English conversation with them. Let's see here. Laura Velez says, why this sentence is wrong. She looked confidently. So you can say this. You can say she looked confident. Okay, that is correct. So she looked confident. She looked like she knew what she was doing. You can say this though. She looked at him confidently. So when we add the object, so we know that she is looking at a person, you can then say that she looked at him confidently. So, but to just say she looked confidently is kind of not a complete sentence. That's why it's incorrect. Let me clean up the questions. Again, I apologize if I'm not getting to your question. We have a lot of questions tonight, already on the list. So I will try to keep going and get through them. Next question is from Eric. Good day, Bob. This is Eric from Melbourne, Victoria. Hello, Eric. How are you? What is your usual agenda for the weekend? My usual agenda is, for almost any weekend, my job is to drive my kids around. So today, my son had a volleyball tournament. My daughter was in a parade. My other son was visiting a friend. Tomorrow, my son is singing in a choir tomorrow evening, and I need to bring him to the choir performance. So what is my normal agenda as a dad who has lots of children? I usually, my agenda is my kids' agenda. My schedule is my kids' schedule. So I spend a lot of time driving around. That's my schedule. And I usually have a nap on Saturday afternoons, and I usually read a book on Sunday afternoons. Papi Chulo says, could you explain the difference between fast and quick? So you can use them the same way. Like you could say, oh, he's a really fast runner, or you could say he is really quick. You could say that someone is mentally quick. You could say that they are a fast thinker. So you see how I'm using them in a slightly different way. Hopefully that helps you a little bit. But they both mean that someone can do something faster or more quickly than someone else. So that's how you would use those two. I don't think that was a great explanation again, but hey, I think you got a couple good example sentences out of that. Tallis has the next question. Hi, Bob. What's the difference between what's the problem and what's the matter? Thanks. They are the same. So I could walk up to someone who, let's say they have the hood of their car open and they're looking at the engine. And I could walk up and say, hey, what's the problem? Or I could walk up and say, hey, what's the matter? Both would mean the same thing, and both would be a valid question. Yep, excellent. Let's see here. Oh, here's a good pronunciation question from Ulysses. Good night, Bob. Good night, Ulysses. How many people in American English, when they pronounce words such as internet, important, interview, mountain, drop the T sound, like as in words without? So I can say internet, but I can also, when I speak quickly, it can sound like I'm saying internet. So you hear how the T becomes super soft. Same with the word important. I can also say important. So as I say the word quickly, I soften the T sound. Interview. See how I almost dropped the T? So the proper pronunciation is interview. But when I speak quickly, I would probably say interview. I went to a job interview the other day. The T is still there really, really slightly. And then the last one, mountain. I went mountain climbing. But if I speak quickly, I would probably say I went mountain climbing. And you hear me drop the T almost completely. So listen to those again if you didn't quite hear how I was saying them. But yeah, we definitely drop some of those sounds for sure. Let's see here. Renata, next question. This is a good one. Renata says, what do you call the thing you get in your eyes when you wake up? So are you talking about sometimes when you wake up, you have some crusty stuff here? We call it gunk. Like, oh, I have some gunk in my eye. So you would say, I have some gunk in my eye when I wake up. So, or I had some gunk. I had some gunk in my eyes when I woke up. So sometimes when you wake up, you just have some gunk in the corner of your eye. That's what we would call it, gunk. I would call it gunk. Let's see here. Let's see. Mike has the next question. Mike says, hi, could you please name the verbs used to describe an act of uncovering window with a window blind? I'm always confused. We just close the blinds, or we let down the blinds, or I would say close the blinds. So window blinds are things that block out the light on a window, and you either like you turn something to close the blinds or you pull down the blind. So those we would both be able to use for sure. Let me see here. Next question from Anderson Gomez. So we hear Anderson Gomez says, "Hi Bob, can you give some explanation or examples about separable and non-separable phrasal verbs?" Yeah, that's a tricky one. It's hard for me to think of something off the top of my head. I know we say things like, you know, I lift up this cup. I lift up this cup. I lift the cup up. So you notice how I separated lift up. So I lift it up. I lift up the cup. I lift the cup up. So that was a separable one. But I can't think of one off the top of my head that's not separable. And it really is just a matter of learning them. Notice that as a native English speaker, I use phrasal verbs all the time, but I don't actually know the rules about how to use them. In fact, most English speakers don't even know what a phrasal verb is until someone teaches them what a phrasal verb is. We just use them automatically. I probably just used some while I was talking without thinking about it. So I would say rather than working on which ones are separable and inseparable, just learn them. Just expose yourself to them a lot. Eugene from Etobicoke. Hi, Eugene. How is it in Etobicoke? A little bit cold, probably. Hi, Bob. What kind of camera do you use for your live stream? Can I buy a Sony Alpha A6400 for live stream? Thanks. I actually use my phone to do a live stream. So right now, this is coming through an Asus Zenfone 3, an older phone. That's what I use right now. It's fast enough for me to live stream at 720p or 1080p. So that's what I'm using, just a phone, Eugene, nothing else. Let's see here. Next question. I got to just do a little bit of tidying up here. Claude Muir says, "Hello, Bob. Do you mind talking a little bit about accent? I met some American people that lived here for a long time and still have a lot of accent." So here's what I know about accents. The younger you are when you learn a language, the less of an accent you have. My mom and my dad came from Holland when they were very young, and they spoke English with no Dutch accent. My grandparents, however, did have an accent. So what I do know is that the younger you are when you learn a language, the easier it is for you to use different muscles to make different sounds with your mouth and to avoid having an accent. When I speak French, I have an English accent because I learned French later in life. The majority of you will probably have an accent when you speak English, but don't worry. Having an accent when you speak English is actually kind of cool. As long as you learn how to speak clearly, and as long as you reduce your accent to the point where people can understand you, people will actually like it. People who speak English with a little bit of a Spanish accent, it's very cool. English with a little bit of a French accent, very cool. People who speak English with a little bit of Chinese accent, very cool. Don't worry too much about it. Get to the point where people can understand you, and then I think things will be fine. I have more questions than I normally have, so I hope that I can get through all of them. We'll see how things go. We're halfway. There's 420 people watching. Hello, everyone. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Next question is from Chris. Hi, Bob. Just wondering, when people say coat or jacket, what they are actually referring to. Is there any difference between them? Thank you. Yes. In fact, one sec. You're in luck. So this is my jacket. So I would call this a fall jacket or a spring jacket. The material is very, very thin, okay? So this is good when it's about 5 to 10 degrees out. I wear my jacket. This is my coat, and I would actually call this a winter coat. It is a lot thicker. It has a lot better insulation. and it's just nicer to wear when it's really cold out, when it's below 0. So what is the difference between a coat and a jacket? Generally, we wear a jacket in the fall and in the spring, and we wear a coat in the winter. We also sometimes wear a raincoat, but that would be just when it's raining. Miroslav, next question. Hi, Miroslav. I'm always happy to see Miroslav because he got me a mug. Miroslav, just to say hello to everyone going to work. I'll watch this live lesson tomorrow. Awesome. Thanks for stopping in and leaving that note, Miroslav. That was really cool of you. Next question from Renata. Is the phrasal verb spiff up common nowadays, and what does it mean? So when you spiff something up, you kind of shine it up a little bit, or you make it look good, and we don't use it very much. We do use the word spiffy, though. You can say, he looked really spiffy. So if I was to wear a suit and a tie and a shirt with a collar and trim my beard and get my hair cut, Jen might say, oh, you look really spiffy tonight. You know, you've dressed up and you look really, really good. But we don't use the word spiff up, the phrase spiff up much anymore. Let's see. Mohammed. This is a tricky one, Mohammed, because the word through has a lot of uses. But Mohammed says, hello, Bob. Please, could you explain when and where we have to use through? The easiest is to think about if you're driving your car, and sometimes you go over a bridge, but sometimes you go through a tunnel, okay? So your car goes through a tunnel. When you go from Britain to France, you can go through a tunnel. It's called the Chunnel, but you go through it, okay? When you have a needle and you need to put a thread, you put a thread through the eye of the needle. So that's just a quick lesson, but the word through is just, it's a little harder to explain in just a few moments on a live lesson. So there's a couple examples for you, and hopefully that helps you with those. Gonzalo says, hi, Bob. I want to ask you if you can teach some phrases to express oneself that oneself is having a great day. Yeah, so the first is you just say, I'm having a great day. I know that sounds like a simple answer, but it's totally how you would say it. Or you would say, I'm having an awesome day. That's a little more informal. Or you could say, my day is going well. Totally a great way to say it as well. If someone was to say to you, hey, are you having a good day? You could reply and say, yes, I'm having a really good day. So there's a few. I'm glad you asked, because that is a really good thing to be able to say, that you're having a great day. Let's see here. Juan says, could you explain indirect questions? Because I got confused. For example, notice I changed your question there a little bit. Where is the bathroom? And could you tell me where the bathroom is? So I can't explain them to you except to tell you that both those questions are right. Both those questions are common. We often flip our questions around. So I might say, do you know where my tea is? Or I could say, could you tell me where I could find my tea? Or I could say, do you know, no, I wouldn't say, oh, I could say, where is my tea? That would be the other example. So you'll just need to get used to that in English as well as other languages. We sometimes invert our questions or shorten our questions or ask them in a slightly different way. Thanks for the question, Juan. Let's see here. Let me get to the next question. RJ the Aussie. It's a grammar question, so that means I probably won't answer it. RJ the Aussie says, are these verbs irregular? Dive and strive. In Australia, people use them as regular ones, but in your hood, I've been seeing them used as irregular ones. Which one is right? So I actually don't know, RJ. I will have to look those up for you. That would be a great question to put down in the comments. It might surprise you to know that as an English speaker, I don't have complete conjugations of verbs in my head in chart form. In French, I do, because that's how I learn my verbs. But in English, I would have to look up whether they are regular or irregular and how we use them in Canada. Because as you know, in your own language, I just use them. Like the other day, I saw my friend dive off a diving board, and when he dove, yeah, see, they're tricky. I need to look them up. So I don't want to try to give an explanation where I make a mistake, but definitely put a question in the comments below, and I will definitely look that up for you. Hariadi says, Bob, could you help me with the proper pronunciation of offer versus over? Thanks, Bob. So the other day, my friend offered me a ride. So that's offered, but offered with the ED. Or the TV show was over. Okay, so offer, and over. You can hear the V sound in over. Hopefully that's tricky, because for me it's so straightforward, but like the offer was good, the TV show was over. Yeah, that's hard. I'm sorry, English is a weird language. I'm sorry that there are parts of it that are challenging for all of you guys. Let's see here. Quinny says, how can I create conversation at work? If you work with other people who speak English, then I would say sit by them when you have a coffee break, sit with them at lunch, and make sure that you always speak English. That's how I would create conversation at work. If you work side by side with them, I would also just make sure you jump in, ask questions about their lives. I actually did a video on small talk. Maybe do a search on YouTube for Bob the Canadian Small Talk, and that might help you as well. You know, encouraging you to talk about sports and the food they like to eat, etc. And then just be nice to them. The best way to learn a language from native speakers is to be really nice to the native speakers. Let me see here. I have to clean up some questions here. Next one is from Hugh J. Hugh J says, hi Bob, what does it mean you know what you signed up for? So that's a kind of a complex thing, but let's say you join the army, okay, and you don't like getting up early in the morning, but everyone knows when you join the army, you have to get up really early in the morning. So if you join the army and you didn't like getting up early, and you were complaining about it, someone could say, hey, you know what? You knew what you signed up for. You knew what you were getting into. Those are two phrases that you would say when someone complains about something that they should have known about when they decided to do something. So people sometimes say this when you have kids. Like if I said, oh, I don't like driving my kids around, someone could say, hey, you decided to have kids. You knew what you signed up for. Okay, you knew what you were getting into. I think I'm going to sneeze. It'll be the first time during a live stream that I sneeze. Let me see here. Mario Paul says, hi Bob, could you explain to me the expression right back at you? Is it a bad expression? No, it can be a good expression. If I say to someone, you know, you're the best person in the world, and they say right back at you, they're basically giving me the same compliment. But if I was to say to someone, you know, you're a real jerk, that's a mean thing to say. They could say right back at you, and that would be a negative thing. So generally we use that in a positive way, but it's usually used between people who know each other really well, like friends or with a brother or sister. You know, if my brother said, hey Bob, you're amazing, I could say, hey, right back at you, which would mean I think the same thing about you. Let's see here. Alex has the next question. Alex says, hi Bob. Hi Alex. The phrase I wonder and I ask myself, does it mean the same thing? Yes. So you could say, sometimes I wonder, why are people mean to each other? And I could say, sometimes I ask myself, why are people mean to each other? So they mean the same thing, Alex. You can use them in the same way. Absolutely. Next question is, let's see here. Renata says, don't ever hold a sneeze. I heard it can be dangerous. Well, we'll see. I think it's gone away now. Nietzsche from Thailand says, hi Nietzsche. Nietzsche says, what What is the meaning of the phrase down to earth? So you wrote down on earth, but I think you mean down to earth. Oops, I spelled it wrong. Down to earth. So when someone's down to earth, they don't drive a fancy car. Even if they have lots of money, they don't drive a fancy car. When you visit them, they just have a nice house and they're just really nice to you. They don't pretend to have more money than they really have. They're just normal, completely normal people. And we would say they are down to earth. I think the world could use a lot more down to earth people. I think that would be very helpful. Let's see here. Henry from Taiwan says, let's see. Hi, Bob. In the Tuesday video about snow a couple weeks ago, right? Yeah. You were teaching Snow Angel by making it in the snow. You cracked me up and I won't forget it for good. Thank you for your action. So what Henry's talking about is a few weeks ago we had a nice snowstorm. So I made an English lesson in the snowstorm and I showed you some of the things that you would have to do. I taught some of the words and phrases you would need to know if you were in a snowstorm. And one of them was I laid on the ground and I made a snow angel. If you search YouTube for Bob the Canadian Snow, you'll find that video and it's towards the end. You'll see me make a snow angel. But I'm glad I could entertain you, Henry. That was a lot of fun. Let's see here. Next question is Mylene Morai says, hi, Bob. Can you tell me the difference between grab and get something? Thanks. So I might go to the kitchen and grab something to eat. I might go to the kitchen and get something to eat. They mean the same thing. Grab is a little more informal, okay? If I get in the car and we're ready to leave, I might jump out and say to Jen, oh, I just got to run in and grab something, or I just got to run in the house and get something. They mean the same thing, exactly the same thing. Absolutely. Let me see here. Let's delete that. Let's see. Jerry says, I found that some people use being and they write being a successful person. So why don't they use you were a successful person? I fixed that sentence there, Jerry, just so you know, you were a successful person. Could you show me how to use being? So it's a way to introduce an idea, okay? So I could say being a good person means that I like to help people. Okay, or I could say, because I am a good person, I like to help people. So it's just a way of introducing the idea. You know, being someone who has free time on a Saturday night, I like to do a live English lesson. I could say, because I have time on a Saturday night, I like to do a live English lesson. Did I just say Friday night? I hope I didn't. But I would start the idea by saying, you know, being someone who has trouble reading, I sometimes wear reading glasses. Did you know that? Sometimes in order to read a book, I have to wear reading glasses. So I could say because I have trouble seeing words when I read a book, I have to read glasses. But I could also say, you know, being someone who is short-sighted, I think that's what I am. I need reading glasses. Now you've seen me with glasses. Let's see here. Let's see. Next question is from Yen Nyung. Nyen says, hi, Bob. Determine and purpose. Are they similar to each other? Thank you. Depends how you use them. For instance, no, they're not really the same. Okay, I'll give you an example of each. Sometimes I try to determine the meaning of the sentence. My purpose is to understand the sentence. So they are slightly different. Thanks, Todd, for taking care of the chat there. That's awesome of you. Please remember that at this point, there are so many questions, it will be difficult for me to get through them all. So please just be patient. When almost 500 people are watching, it does get a little challenging. So I know people tend to ask their question over and over again in the chat. That doesn't help, okay? That just makes Todd's job harder. So please ask using the form, but I do have to tell you at this point, I probably won't get to your question because I have quite a few. So Chari says, Chari says, sorry, I wanted to say, what is the best way to learn vocabulary while reading? So the best way to learn vocabulary while reading, there's two ways. One is you just read the book, and you read a lot of books, and your brain will actually learn new vocabulary. You want to make sure the books aren't too difficult. You want to make sure you know quite a few of the words already, and your mind will actually start to learn the other words. The second way to do it is if you read a book the first time and you underline every 20th or 30th word and you look it up, it's a slower way of reading. And then the next time you go back and you read the book through without looking the words up. So it really depends what you want to do. If you can read the book and understand enough to know what's happening in the story and understand it enough that it's enjoyable, I would say don't stop and keep looking up words because your brain will just learn them automatically. But you do need to read a lot. Randy has a follow-up question. Hi, Bob. What's the best way to learn vocabulary? Hello from Costa Rica. Hello, Randy from Costa Rica. I always recommend reading. Okay, reading is a great way to learn vocabulary. So the more you can read, the more vocabulary you will pick up and the more you will learn. The other thing you can do is while you read, make flashcards. Flashcards are paper where you have the word in English on one side and on the other side you have the word in your own language. So read so that you find new words to learn, and then write those words on flashcards and practice them until you know them really, really well. Let's see here. Papi Chulo says, what is the difference between a few and few? So if I went to the store, I would say that there were only a few people there. And I could say I went to the store and there were few people. There were few people there. Yeah, I use a few a lot. Like the other day, I needed to get a few groceries. Yeah, so I think I use a few a lot more. You can use few. Let me think of an example sentence. There were few reasons why I would buy that product. Yeah, let's look that one up. Leave a question in the description. I have to do a bit more research on that to figure out why there is a difference. Adam has a simpler question for me. Thank you, Adam. Adam from the Czech Republic says, hi, Bob. Hi, Adam. What's the difference between prison and jail? Thank you. As far as I know, they are the same thing. You might know someone who has gone to jail. You might know someone who has gone to prison. In English, we use them the same way. If you watch a television show with police in it who arrest people, they either put them in prison or they put them in jail, and they mean the same thing. So, my Leanne Moray says, hi, Bob. Let me just take a drink here. Hi, Bob. Can you tell me the difference? So I did correct your sentence there, Mylene. Can you tell me the difference between filthy and dirty? They are the same thing. So our dog Oscar the other day was playing in the mud. And when he was done playing in the mud, he was filthy. When he was done playing in the mud, he was dirty. So they mean the same thing, okay? Now, I would look up those words because they do have more definitions than just how I use them right there. But in those two examples, that's exactly what they mean. Let's see here. Next one. Renata says I'm slurping. I try not to slurp. We all know the word slurp now from watching Bob the Canadian. Sean made a really funny video of me slurping the other day, but see, no slurp. That was pretty good. Let's see here. Next question is from Lula. Similar question, actually. Hi, Bob. I'm enjoying my freedom. What's the difference between arrested and taken to jail? So they would mean about the same things. The police can arrest someone. When they arrest someone, it's the act of catching them doing a crime. So if I was arrested for driving too fast, it would mean that they put handcuffs on me right there and I would be arrested. When you are taken to jail, that's the next step. So first you are arrested, and then you are taken to jail. But in English, we sometimes use them to mean the same thing. Like, oh, did you hear Joe got arrested? Or did you hear that Joe got put in jail? In that sense, it would mean the same thing. But technically, arrested is what the police do when they catch you doing a crime, and then they take you to jail. Let's see here. Next question. Daniel from DK says, hi Bob, how do you pronounce the word for the color Bordeaux? So we do use the French pronunciation. So in English, we use Bordeaux if we say Bordeaux. And we don't generally use it for a color. It's more of a word we use for wine. Maybe you've bought a wine and it's a Bordeaux. Okay, so we do use the French pronunciation there. Mylene Moret. Sorry, Mylene, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm trying though. Hi Bob, what's the difference between, what's the difference between sort of and kind of? They are the same thing, and they are just words we use to fill in a sentence. So it kind of relates to quantity. Like, I sort of drink too much tea. It means I don't really drink too much tea, but I kind of drink too much tea. And I could say I kind of drink too much tea, which would mean the same thing. So it means that it's less than what we are saying it is. So I sort of like football. It means I don't really like football, but I don't hate football. I sort of like football, so I like it a little bit. I kind of like football means I like it a little bit. That was a better explanation there right at the end. So yes, there's no way I'm getting through all these questions. I'll try to do a few more. Let's see here. Macau says, when I watch National Geographic about animals, I have noticed that they say, look at him. However, it was a female or a baby. I thought it should be correct, isn't it? So depending on what we're talking about, if we're talking about animals, you would say, look at it. To talk about a baby animal, you could say, look at him if you knew it was a male, or you could say, look at her if you knew it was female. But we'd sometimes use it to talk about animals for sure. Let me clean up my questions here so I don't get confused. Let's see here. Oh, this is a challenging one. Saran says, hi Bob. How do I know if the C in a word is pronounced as a K sound or a C sound or an S sound, I guess? You just have to memorize it. Sorry. Some have a pattern, right? But some don't. So like, let me see here. Like reaction, it's pronounced like a hard K, reaction. And action, it's a hard K. But then if I say receive, it's a softer C, right? So it's an S sound. So you just kind of have to use the words and start to remember them. I'm sure there are some rules. I just don't know off the top of my head what those rules are. Let's see. Diaz says, hi Bob, is it interesting to watch movies without understanding some words, and how to watch those movies? Thanks in advance. So first of all, a couple things. If you can understand enough to enjoy the movie, just watch the movie and you will eventually start to hear the words better. But I think one thing is if you turn subtitles on and if you slow the movie down a little bit and then watch it once with the English subtitles on, not the subtitles in your own language, and then write down a few words as you go through that you can look up, and then re-watch the movie with subtitles off. So yeah, and Deekshansh Pathak is actually giving some hints about how to understand when it is a hard C sound and when it is a softer C sound. And those are great rules. So do look up that from that last question, what the rules are. They're not perfect rules, but they work in a lot of the situations. Let's see here. Cool says, thanks, Bob, for all that you do for us. My question is, what is the difference between nearly and almost? So I nearly hit another car yesterday. I almost hit another car yesterday. I didn't, actually. That's just an example. They mean the same thing in those two situations. Evaldo says, has the river frozen? So as some of you know, over there's a river that goes past my farm. It has frozen once, Evaldo, and then it did thaw. Okay, so the river did freeze once, but then it did get warm again, and the river did thaw out. So hopefully I can show you some more of that as we get into the middle of winter. Let's see here. I'm just going to try and find one or two more questions, and then we're going to wrap this up. Here's the second last question. How Paulo says, yeah, so Todd's asking, let's keep politics out of the chat, everyone. When you learn English with Bob the Canadian, we are friendly to everyone, so let's try and keep it that way. Hi, Bob. How do you pronounce the word synonym? Thanks a million. Synonym. So synonym. It's hard to say, isn't it? So synonym. There you go. As opposed to cinnamon, which is a spice. Let me do one more question, folks, and then we're going to wrap this up. Let's see here. Rambo says, hey, Bob, have you ever watched one of my movies? I did indeed watch Rambo, the very first Rambo and the second Rambo, way back in the 80s. I rented the movie on tape, and I watched it with my older brother. It was a lot of fun. That's my older brother, Dave the Canadian, by the way. But I don't think I watched Rambo 2 with him, though. I'm pretty sure we watched Rambo 1 together, but I'll have to ask him at Christmas when I see them. Anyways, hey, there's a couple things you should do. One, if you did not understand some parts of this live lesson, tomorrow there will be subtitles. Come back and watch the section that you had some trouble with again, or watch the whole video again. It's great listening practice to hear the questions and how I answer the questions. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for learning English. Thank you to all 470, 80 people that were here. That's just really awesome. I'm happy that I could help you just learn a little bit more English. If you are new here, I'm Bob the Canadian. Click that subscribe button so that you know when I put out more lessons. And there will be a new lesson on Tuesday, and there will be a live lesson next Friday. I think there will be a live lesson next Saturday night, but I'll have to let you know because I might have something that I have to go to. It's almost December, and we are getting into more and more Christmas activities here in Canada. Anyways, Bob the Canadian here. Thank you to all of you for watching. You are very awesome people. I'm just going to say bye in the chat. Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. You are all awesome. I hope you learned just a little bit more English tonight. See you on Tuesday. I'm going to press the stop button if I can find it. There it is.